Welcome to the Engineering Influence podcast from the ACEC 2024 Fall Conference, brought to you by Bentley, our wonderful sponsor for programming at this year's event. And I'm very pleased to be joined by one of the session's first keynote speakers, Dr. Hakeem Oluseyi.
Thank you, sir.
As they say in the home country, because I know it's an emphatic.
It's an emphatic statement.
Emphatic statement.
Yes.
You, I think you had the benefit of a good, packed, attentive audience today.
I did, yeah.
Right, kind of your home field advantage. I mean, you're
right.
Number one, hometown. Welcome.
That's right. Yeah.
So welcome home.
Thank you.
Number two, a room full of engineers.
My people.
Yeah. So And a really inspirational story, I think, from where you started and now where you are and how you're giving back.
Yeah. Thank you.
For those who weren't in the speech,
right.
Of course, I mean, encapsulate a little bit about that journey early on. I mean, you pretty much, had to be where you are right now in the field of physics, applied physics, and all the work that you're doing, and your upbringing,
right,
and what you went through even early in just going to college,
right, yeah.
So that's a journey. If you want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you grew up.
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from the Deep South, right? My mother is a native of New Orleans. My father is a native of rural Mississippi, and neither of my parents or anybody before my parents in my family had formal education. My father dropped out of school in elementary school. My mother in high school, as her parents before her.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have academic models.
Yeah.
But what I had was a mother who was an avid reader. And so my parents divorced when I was young, at 4. And so, your kids do what you do, not what you say, right?
Yeah.
And because she was a reader, I became a reader. And my childhood was itinerant. I moved every year, right? Never went to the same school 2 years in a row, lived in the toughest neighborhoods, had a lot of neglect and violence and this sort of thing I had to deal with, right? Until my mother moved me to rural Mississippi, where I was surrounded by my family village, my father's people. Yeah. And so I was protected for the first time, but it wasn't the best educational system.
Yeah.
And not only that, my family, to make money to survive, were engaged in illegal activities, right? Which I also took up myself.
Yeah.
But I was born a nerd, man. So being an avid reader, I was able to do well academically, aside from mathematics. Yeah. I did poorly mathematically.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because, there's no book you can read that gives you the basics. But lucky for me, I went to the Navy after high school. And in the Navy, I learned algebra. Yeah. Which prepared me for college. And when I went to college, I had my challenges, both academically and financially, right? I had bouts of homelessness. Yeah. And, things were tough, but I stuck it out, worked hard, was lucky to have people to come into my life to help me out, right? That was a big part of it. And, between their efforts and my efforts,
it really is that it is that example of people who you meet along the way can really define your trajectory in life. Yeah. I mean, you had a number of professors and researchers who were like, okay, here you go.
Here you go.
You had the ability to go to the University of Georgia on that one.
Yeah, summer in 1988, right? Paid for the National Science Foundation, the research program. Yeah. And I would not have gone if my own professor at Tougaloo College, the late, great Dr. Professor Richard McGinnis, paid for my way to go out of his own pocket. Yeah. And I didn't even know research was a thing. And so, my mentor there, the way he treated me made it feel like a welcoming place. Yeah. And,
you mentioned that, he kind of was like, okay, here's the keys to the kingdom, right?
Right.
Here's the office, here's the building, here's the lab, here's everything. Yeah. And for the first time, it's kind of like, okay.
You're giving me trust. Yeah. I never experienced that. I was always treated as if, I'm expected to do wrong. Yeah. Right. And so I lived that out. I thought that's what was expected of me. So I became the caricature, right? The young black male, right? In the less healthy sense. Yeah.
Even though, you have, okay, so you're an avid reader and maybe weak on the mathematics side, but then you go to the Navy, have algebra. But at what point did you realize that, physics is a path? Like, I'm always interested by this because the math gene missed me completely. Right? My father's an economist. Right. My grandfather's an electrical engineer. Right. I forget about it. Right. And I always look at things like physics. Yeah. And the theoretical side of it and all that. It's not just math, but there's a lot else that goes into
the logic.
The logic.
Right. Yeah.
So at what point did it spark in your mind saying, this is home for me. This is something that makes sense.
That's a great question because I didn't start that way.
Yeah.
I started off chemistry pre-med.
Yeah.
Because, I had been my high school valedictorian. I sort of had an identity as a smart kid.
Yeah.
Even though I was in a, academic district where the education was poor. I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. And man, my second year, I take organic chemistry.
Yeah.
And I realized that is the end of chemistry pre-med. And I take because I know I'm going to be STEM, I take my first intro to physics class. Now, another thing about me in college is I almost never went to class.
Yeah.
And I discovered that with physics, I had studied so much physics and logic for fun as a kid that I could just show up for the exam.
It makes sense.
And make hundreds. Yeah. And so the joke between my professor and me always was that he no longer had to make a key for his exams. He could just use my exam as the key. Yeah. But that's what it was. And I realized, this is what's easy for me. So now physics is my major.
Got it.
But I didn't know physics was a career again until someone just showed up to help who was a student from MIT.
Yes.
Who had started a conference for helping students from these backgrounds that had no awareness of the opportunity, bring you to MIT, and we'll show you what a career in physics is and introduce you to the recruiters for graduate school, how to write your applications, how to write your, for scholarships and, for admissions. And, I listened.
Yeah, because at that point in time, like you were not only kind of working a job out of physics, out of academia.
Yeah.
Just janitorial at a hotel, not even making enough to live.
That's right. Yep.
And then somebody comes and says you can actually have a career in this, and then all of a sudden you find yourself at Stanford.
Yeah, as a graduate student,
which is like culture shock because you have
massively.
And then the entire Silicon Valley, and during your presentation you mentioned, okay, when I went over, but how even that transition, right? I mean, to go from a small Southern school, University of Georgia, now to Stanford, and then to Silicon Valley.
Yes.
Where you're actually developing patents.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, mainly in the field of photonics, right? So it was
semiconductor manufacturing. Okay. So the manufacture of computer chips. So I worked on what's known as chemical mechanical polishing, chemical vapor deposition, and what's known as silicon etch. And a lot of spectroscopy applications that I invented that I brought from astronomy and astrophysics into the world of semiconductor manufacturing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was a pioneer of that in that field.
But even having that, I mean, what was that like? I mean, because it was like such a huge change.
It was a huge change. And at first, the big difficulty for me, there were two difficulties. One was the social difficulty as well as the academic difficulty. The social difficulty is I'm a deeply Southern country boy, right? With a heavy dose of urban ghetto. Yeah. And now I'm in genteel.
These guys are North Face vest wearing venture capitalists looking for their next round of funding, right?
It was and no one could understand me when I spoke.
Yeah.
Because, we don't add the ends to our words and it's 1,000 words a minute, right? Yeah. So it was hard, man. It really was difficult internally, right? Yeah. The internal pain and realizing that I had to really just humble myself and give myself over to the process because it was hard to believe. When I got there, I would go to scientific talks and I never understood anything ever.
Yeah.
The first time someone handed me a scientific journal research paper, that stuff is in another language.
Well, it is. I mean, and it's pretty inoculated against, anyone else looking into it because they have their own library of their own language.
It's their own language. Yeah. And then every sentence has like 10 references. And I'm like, you expect me to do this someday? Yeah. But then like magic, I look up 3-4 years later and no matter what talk I go to, if I've never heard of it before, I understand everything. I could figure out everything. I have that physics superpower that now you kind of know just by understanding a few things about how nature works.
Yeah.
There's so much else you can just figure out, right? And so understanding matter, the interaction of light and matter and how they behave at the quantum level sort of opened up the entire world for me. And I realized that I could take my skills and go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, I had a great understanding of how matter behaves at different phases. I had a great understanding of different technologies, a great understanding of computation and solving systems of differential equations.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, guess what they use when they make computer chips? Vacuum chambers, plasmas, the analysis is the same. That looks like a lot more money than physics research. I'm going to Silicon Valley.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're able to take that and now move it towards something even broader and even more beneficial to society. And the fact that you're able to, I mean, you made a really good point in saying that, there's a huge, to kind of paraphrase it, it's a big difference. And it's not a 1-for-1 between, intelligence and education.
Big difference.
A lot of fundamentally smart people do not have access to education.
That's right.
That limits their capability.
That's right. If you take the dumbest people in the world and train them well, they will do well.
Yeah. But but finding that, breaking that barrier to allow them to actually access it is the big thing. So that's really what you've been dedicating your time to.
Yeah. Let me tell you a couple of statements.
Yeah.
What are the 3 questions that most people ask themselves when they get to undergrad? I'll tell you, when they choose their major. All right. One question is, what am I good at?
Yeah.
The next question is, what can I make money doing? And the third question is, what has the least amount of math?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then the second thing that I've learned, because I've been a part of the, at local to national level, our education system in the country.
Yeah.
And here's what I've also come to learn. People learn mathematics well in one of 2 ways by the time they graduate high school.
Yeah.
Number 1, it's in your house. Number 2, you got lucky.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
By and large, we are not preparing people.
Yeah.
I've been a professor at private universities, small universities, big universities, community colleges. Yeah. Even if they are the students who are the top students, physics majors, most people are missing the same stuff, which is the stuff as a STEM professional you do every single day.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, where is this mismatch? Well, guess what? I can do something about it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we always look at now, because the engineering workforce, we need more people everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And it's always that barrier to entry.
It's the barrier to entry.
When I was at Penn State, I was the one poli-sci guy, and everybody I was roommates with or friends with were engineers, architectural, EE, whatever it was. And it was just a different world. And I still remember them that first year getting those litmus classes. That not designed to get you to the next stage, but to weed people out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think, we have to do a better job of, from an academic standpoint, of opening that door to get those outliers in, because the industry's changing, right? It's not just math now. You have all these other things that are coming into it.
That's right. Yeah. The big problem is I see it. That is not even being addressed, I think. We focus on the kids.
Yeah.
But I'm a strong believer, because I've seen it happen. You can't educate the kids without educating the parents. You need to educate adults.
Yeah.
Because in my home, my parents couldn't tell me anything about education. Yeah. Nothing. They both dropped out of school. My son, who's very young, when he was young, he completed Algebra 1 at 7, Algebra 2 and Trig at 9, started calculus at 10 years old.
Man.
At a young age, my mom tells me, you know what? I think he's smarter than you. And my response was, you know what? No, the hell he ain't.
Yeah.
His dad has, exactly. His dad has a PhD in physics.
Yeah.
His exposure, I homeschooled him up to age 10, right? Yeah. That's what made him, he is a talented kid.
Yeah.
But if he had my dad and mom, he would have been me.
Yeah, you expose it early, and then it's become the foundation. And then
that's right.
You lose the fear.
That's right. And another thing about it is that we miseducate ourselves. And I'll tell you why. Here's what we do. This is a very simple one.
Yeah.
I've been asking this question for 25 years of people.
Yeah.
And the question is, in one word, what is math about? What do you think the most common answer I get is?
I don't know, numbers.
Numbers. Yeah. That's numbers. Now think of your favorite physics equations. F equals ma. How many numbers are in that?
Yeah, none.
It's about
the world. It's about.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. But here's the thing. It should be like that from day one. Here's what we do with our kids. We're like, little Mary, what's 2 blocks plus 3 blocks? And they count the blocks.
Yeah.
Then you do it with pictures. What's 2 apples plus 3 apples? Then you take away the kind of thing and you just focus on numbers until they're a teenager, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
So when you do introduce abstract thought, here's what you do. You say x plus 3 equals 7. What number is x? So you start thinking like x is a number.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a thing. So if I ask people, and I've been doing this for 20 years, what's 2 gorillas plus 3 gorillas? They will say 5 gorillas.
Yeah.
But if you say, what's 2x squared z plus 3x squared z, they're like, get out my face, nerd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not realizing it's the exact same question.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And because that's how we teach it. Right? So we need to really change the way we structure the way we teach mathematics. Like, let me give you another example. What's 2 gorillas plus 3 apples?
Well, it's the same.
It's the same thing, right? Yeah. So you realize quickly 2 things need to be the same thing in order to add them.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, let me tell you what they teach you in math. Suppose I want to add 2 fractions. The denominator is the kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
2/3 plus 5/3 is 7/3.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In school, they teach you to find the sum, you must find the least common denominator. What does that mean?
Well, that's what always lost me. I'm like, this makes no.
The language doesn't make sense.
And that's exactly it. I got hung up on the description instead of the actual fundamental solving of the issue.
It's super easy once you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing that popped into my head, I was like, wow, here I am doing all this like cutting edge science. And when it comes to numbers, all I ever do is add, subtract, and multiply the single digit numbers. I'm not, but if I get the problem x squared times x cubed, that's just 2 plus 3. Yeah. Right. To get to the answer. But the average American, that's not their baseline. So let me give you what I mean by that. When I was in the military, and then people have all heard this in various forms, but maybe some people haven't. They talked to us about the 4 stages of learning. First, you're unconscious incompetent. You don't know you don't know.
Yeah.
Then you become conscious incompetent. You know you don't know.
Yeah.
Then you become conscious competent. You can do it, but you got to think about it to do it.
Yeah.
And then finally, you become unconscious competent. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
So driving a stick is like that, right? When you start off, you got to really think about it, but then it becomes
second nature, and you're not even thinking.
So the question is, mathematically, for the average human, for the average person, what is unconscious competency? Adding, subtracting, multiplying the single digit numbers. We all have that.
Yeah.
But that whole other level that should be unconscious competent,
it's just
not there.
Yeah.
And so one of my goals in life is to change that level, move that level to where it should be, which is really the STEM math fundamentals.
It's just not here. Also, you're going around the world, and also
all around the world. Absolutely. Yeah.
Diplomacy. You work with the State Department.
That's right.
You've been to South Asia. You've been to Africa.
All over Africa, South Asia, East Asia. Yeah.
So it's fantastic. So we just need to broaden that pool.
We do. We absolutely do. We need ourselves well educated.
Yeah, exactly. Especially now, because I think we're heading towards that area where this is becoming so ingrained in everything we do.
Oh yeah.
That we need to have that fundamental level of understanding so we can actually take advantage of the technologies that are coming down the pike.
Absolutely.
Especially with AI. I mean, the quality of the result is what you put into it.
Yeah.
All the prompt engineering that goes into that. Yeah. With physics, I guess the question I have for you on just the pursuit of and the study of.
Yes.
Where do you think things are going? Or, not the theoretical side, you've got the string theory versus or have we reached a point where things are stalling out, or do you think that what's the next step?
Right. So theoretically, it looks a little like, okay, a lot hasn't moved much this century, but experimentally, major breakthroughs have been occurring. So as far as like fundamental physics goes, the biggest thing in recent times on Earth has been achieving net positive fusion, right? And so, it's not, it was in an experimental lab at Lawrence Livermore, the ignition facility there, but that means that it's possible now.
Yeah, that we've actually crossed that level of saying, yes, it's gone from theoretical, now it's possible.
It's possible, but you now have to optimize the engineering to make it profitable and, commercially viable.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one. In the field of astrophysics, the fact that gravitational wave astronomy has opened up this whole new window in the universe to let us see, you don't know what universe you're living in if you can't see it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for example, when we do our calculations of how just the stuff that exists comes into existence, we knew that stars made most of the elements bigger than helium. Yeah. I mean, bigger than hydrogen. But now the question, helium, the stars make that too, but not as much as was made initially.
Yeah.
But now the question was, these heavier elements, a lot of them we depend on, things like iridium, rubidium, where are they coming from? Well, it turned out that the basic idea for that was a collision of these dead stellar cores, neutron stars. And, and nobody thought that could be occurring enough to create the elements as we see them.
Yeah.
But then we observe it happen through gravitational wave astronomy, and realize that in that one collision between neutron stars, an Earth's mass of of gold was created.
Yeah. So now it's understanding that it's just not a question of volume of occurrences, but what you actually get out of that one.
That's right. Yeah. It's like, so all the gold you're wearing came from the collision of two neutron stars. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Event Horizon Telescope. Mm-hmm. Now we image black holes at the centers of galaxies.
And we've gone from theoretically proving that they even exist to now imaging what we thought was impossible to image.
Yeah. And now the Europa Clipper just went up, and we have the test satellite that's finding planets around the nearby stars, and all of this is aimed at the search for life elsewhere in the universe. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I would not be surprised at all if we found evidence for life outside of Earth, either in our own solar system or using the James Webb Space Telescope to look at the atmospheres of a nearby planet that Tesla's discovered. Mm-hmm. And find life remotely in that way. I would not be surprised.
It's I think we find ourselves right now in this amazing pivot point where we've gone from, manned space travel, of course, and now we have the work that SpaceX is doing. The fact that they were able to recapture, the rocket nuts. That was insane. Yeah. Just looking at the iteration of engine from one to the first to how clean and sleek it is now.
Yeah.
Mars travel is within. I mean, people alive now are going to be watching the first. Landing on Mars. It seems like it's
potentially.
Yeah. It seems like it's a hopefully another golden age, right?
I think it has been. I mean, as far as space travel goes, it really has been. You know, and I think with the fusion stuff, it has been an experimental golden age, and the theory, and if you look at the big questions in theory, dark matter, dark energy, we have no clue still after studying this stuff for, 25 years. 35 years.
But that's another reason to get into it, because there's so many questions that they still need to be answered.
It is, but all the old answers seem like, okay, it's time to, string theory, that was a dead end that went nowhere. What is somebody clever is going to come through, and, maybe it'll be one of us.
It was pretty elegant when he thought about it. I was like, could I read a novice reading stuff about it? And I'm like, well, okay, that makes sense. But the question is, that didn't work out. What's next?
What's next? It's hard to see that right now, because there's so many different avenues. Mm-hmm. So the competitor is this something different about gravity, and there's different ideas on that. There's this theory called modified gravity, which has now evolved into something called scalar vector tensor gravity. Mm-hmm. There's a new thing that was invented a long time ago that's been just resurged called massive gravity. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that the graviton, which is thought to be the particle that mediates the quantum particle that mediates gravity, has mass itself, and that means that it won't be an infinitely reaching force, which means that it would weaken at distances. So you would get what appears to be dark matter, even though it's just but none of those things, then there's like spin quantum networks and loop quantum gravity. None of those have paid off. They're all great ideas. They're all beautiful. They work in certain contexts, but they don't work in every context. And so it's like, that's not the answer. So what the answer is still awaiting discovery.
Well, that's why it's so fascinating.
It is.
Well, Hakeem, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
I really appreciate your time. Thanks for the presentation.
Love it.
Book signing as well. And I don't have a copy with me, but tell our audience also about the book. Where can get it.
So the book is titled A Quantum Life, My Unlikely Journey from the Street to the Stars. There are 3 versions currently out. Mm-hmm. There is the adult version of the book and the audiobook. Mm-hmm. There is the YA version, young adult version of the book and audiobook. And I voiced the audiobooks myself. And I've sold it as a movie. Awesome. Originally, it was sold with Chadwick Boseman working title in Universal as a studio, but with Chadwick Boseman's death, sadly, that deal was no longer. And so now it's with Oprah and De Niro, Harpo and Tribeca. Yeah, so
it's not a bad combination.
Not a bad combination. They just reached out to us that they're making progress on the script. So
good. Good. Hopefully it gets into production and we can see it on the big screen. But go out and get the book. It's available everywhere. Go to Amazon, everywhere else, and fantastic.
And by the way, I'd like to mention, if you're a sci-fi fan, I have a podcast with Roddenberry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called the Does It Fly podcast. So Gene Roddenberry, when his writers were introducing new technologies, he'd ask them, does it fly? Meaning, could this work in the real world? So my co-host is Marvel's red carpet host. Her name is Tamara Krinsky.
Yes, I've seen her a lot on the pre-shows and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so she's like a sharp person herself. And so we go into the technologies and different sci-fi.
And actually real world test it.
I evaluate them from the science perspective. She evaluates it from these Hollywood perspectives. And then we chat about them, but it's fun. You end feeling good and you learn something and you were entertained.
I saw a YouTube video not too long ago that there were a couple of guys out in California. I forget what the university was, but they're all engineers, and they built an actual lightsaber that they actually did a lightsaber that is modeled after the one that Disney produced for its things.
Interesting.
But actually made it significantly better.
Interesting.
And they're trying to actually market it and try to get a license for sale, but all the mechanics and everything to actually extend it, everything.
Right.
I mean, they're not using plasma, but they're using like LEDs and things like that. But it's as close as you're going to get to it. So
we did the lightsaber. We've covered the lightsaber.
You covered the lightsaber?
We've published about 30 or so episodes so far.
What was the answer on the lightsaber? Could it be done as like a contained?
Yeah. So I was looking at a plasma containment device. So I said, based on the existing technology, there's nothing that you could get that will both look and behave like the lightsaber that you see. And so there have been people, like you said, I saw people that built
there's somebody who
things.
did like a variation on it.
But being the lightsaber as depicted, tough.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah, if not impossible.
One day. We can hope.
All right.
Hakeem, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah. And again, this has been Engineering Influence podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, coming to you from the 2024 Fall Conference, brought to you by Bentley. And we will see you next time.